So listen to the confidence now. King tries to dissuade him, right? His brothers attacked him. So people are going to try to throw you off your purpose and throw you off what you need to do. You need to keep going. David won't be taken off the mission and his purpose for that day. Restoring men and history, David and Goliath, a great role model for men in King David, and a phenomenal story. Outstanding man, King David. Warrior, king, a man after God's own heart. Fought wars and won wars. Man of courage, a man of obedience, a man of humility. Acts 22:13 is a great way to introduce David. This is what it says. I have found David, the son of Jesse, a man after my heart, who will do all my will. 1 Kings 15:4-5 says, but for David's sake, the Lord his God gave him a lamp in Jerusalem to raise up his son after him and to establish Jerusalem, because David did what was right in the sight of the Lord and did not deviate from anything that he commanded him all the days of his life, except in the case of Uriah the Hittite. Pretty amazing, right? Pretty phenomenal to have that said about you by God, and he's the only man that he said that about. Only one. David and Goliath. Now let's just read the passages, because this is a phenomenal role model for men. An exciting one. If you could hit the subscribe button and help us build better, stronger men, we would appreciate it. Now the Philistines gathered their armies for battle, and they were gathered at Sakah, which belongs to Judah. Some of these pronunciations may be wrong through the passages, but you'll get the point of the story. And they camped between Sakah and Azekah in Ephes-dammim. Saul and the men of Israel were assembled and camped in the valley of Elah. And they drew up in battle formation to confront the Philistines. Philistines were standing on the mountain on one side, while Israel was standing on the mountain on the other side, with the valley between them. Then a champion came forward from the army encampment on the Philistines, named Goliath from Gath. His height was 6 cubits and a span. Now, some say this was 9 feet. One commentator said it was about 11 feet, but imagine this. You're facing him. You're in this story. And he had a bronze helmet on his head, and he wore scale armor, which weighed 5,000 shekels of bronze. Imagine that. He also had bronze greaves on his legs and a bronze saber slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and the head of his spear weighed 600 shekels of iron. And his shield carrier walked in front of him. So think about facing this man, not just over 9 feet tall, in full armor, protected from this heavy, heavy armor. How can, say, a man of 5'8" deal with it? Or whatever the case may be, or whomever is going to challenge him in this story of all the Israelites, how could many of them face this man in full armor? Think about it. He stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel and said to them, why don't you come out to draw up in battle formation? Am I not the Philistine, and you the servants of Saul? Choose a man as your representative and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight me and kill me, then we will become your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall become our servants and serve us. Then the Philistine said, I have defied the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man so that we may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and very fearful. So let's stop for a second. Where's the faith at? The faith for the Philistines is where? Where's their faith? It's in Goliath, right? Where's the faith of the Israelites? It's not to be seen right here, is it? They're fearful right now. What's it say? All of Israel is scared, fearful, dismayed and fearful, it says. Why do you think Israel's fearful? Saul's afraid because remember earlier, chapter 15, Samuel, the Spirit of the Lord has left him, and the Spirit of the Lord's gone where? To David, right? All of Israel is afraid to face him. So they don't have much faith right now. Now, their leader Saul is what? If you go back in previous chapters, he was the tallest. Who wanted him? Saul as the king, the Israelites, right? They wanted him as king. So a couple of points that can happen to modern armies or groups or today. If your leader is scared, it may damage the morale of your troops. Leaders need to be bold, decisive, and have courage. So Saul's afraid, and the Israelites are afraid as well. Let's go on. 12. Now David was the son of the Ephrathite of Bethlehem in Judah, the man whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons. And Jesse was old in the days of Saul, advanced in years among men. The 3 older sons of Jesse had followed Saul to the battle, and the names of his 3 sons who had gone into the battle were Eliab, the firstborn, and second to him, Abinadab, and the third, Shammah, may be the incorrect pronunciation. So David was the youngest. Now the 3 oldest followed Saul, but David went back and forth from Saul to tend his father's flock at Bethlehem. And the Philistine came forward morning and evening and took his stand for 40 days. So 40 days, Goliath comes forward, insults and challenges the Israelites, right? Challenges Israel. No one comes forward. No one, no captain, the king, no soldier, nobody. 40 days, morning and evening. He challenges them. No one will go out to meet him. Think about that. What does that do to an army, do you think? Well, we would think that the confidence deteriorates in that army, and the confidence in this army and in Goliath increases, right? 17, then Jesse said to his son David, watch this and watch the providence. Take now for your brothers an ephah of this roasted grain and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to your brothers. 18, bring also these 10 slices of cheese to the commander of their 1,000, and look into the well-being of your brothers, and bring back confirmation from them. For Saul and they and all the men of Israel are in the valley of Elah, fighting the Philistines. So David got up early in the morning and left the flock with the keeper, and took the supplies and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the entrenchments encircling the camp while the army was going out in battle formation, shouting the war cry. Israel and the Philistines drew up in battle formation, army against army. And then David left the baggage in the care of the baggage keeper and ran to the battle line. Notice as he runs to the battle line. And he entered and greeted his brothers, and he was speaking to them. As he was speaking to them, it says, behold, the champion, the Philistine from Gath, named Goliath, was coming up from the army of the Philistines, and he spoke these same words, and David heard him. When all the men of Israel saw the man, they fled for him and were very fearful of him. So when they see him, who flees? All the men of Israel flee. So no one will face him again. No captain, no general, not Abner, not Saul. And why is David even here? Because he was obedient to his father, right? Father told him to come here. God has brought the anointed to the battle, David. Matthew Henry calls it divine providence. Henry says this, Jesse little thought of sending his son to the army just at that critical juncture, But the wise God orders the time and all the circumstances of actions and affairs so as to serve his designs of securing the interest of Israel and advancing the men after his own heart. Who's the man after his own heart? David. He's about to advance him, right? So God will advance David. 25, and the men of Israel said, have you seen this man who is coming up? Surely he is coming up to defy Israel. And it will be that the king will make the man who kills him wealthy with great riches, and will give him his daughter and make his father's house free in Israel. Then David said to the men who were standing by him, what will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and rids Israel of the disgrace? See, listen to how he calls him a disgrace. He's not very intimidated, is he? Why? We'll see that. He has what kind of anger? Righteous anger, right? 4, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he has dared to defy the armies of the living God? There it is. The people answered him in agreement with this statement, saying, this is what will be done for the man who kills him. Now Eliab, his oldest brother, heard him when he spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger burned against David, and he said, why is it that you have come down? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I myself know your insolence and the wickedness of your heart, for you have come down in order to see the battle. Now we know this isn't true. David hasn't come down to see any battle. His father has sent him. But you got to stay on purpose and mission when people try to knock you off. But David said, what have I done now? Was it not just a question? Then he turned away from him to another and said the same thing. And the people replied with the same words as before. See, watch. Henry points out that the jealousy of his brother and envy don't deter him. What's that mean? It doesn't deter him from his mission, his purpose from God. So, good point for you men here. Don't let your family, your brothers, your sisters, anyone deter you from your purpose, your mission, or what you know needs to be done. It might just be envy, jealousy, preventing you from getting done what you need to get done. 31, when the words that David spoke were heard, they informed Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, may no one's heart fail on account of him. Your servant will go and fight this Philistine. No one would go. David now goes to the king and says, I'll go. Why? Why does he do it? For God and country. He's insulting the armies of God. David takes offense to it. Let's go back to chapter 15. When Samuel's doing the anointing and God is picking the new king through Samuel, who will be new king, God says what? 1 Samuel 16. And what did Eliab look like? He was the oldest and taller. He thought he would be chosen by Samuel. He was not. When they entered, he looked at Eliab and thought, surely the Lord's anointed is standing before him. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For God does not see as man sees, since man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And note, because we talk about friendship, look at the heart of men. Pick men for their hearts to be your friends. Don't look at their title, their position, their wealth, their status, their height. You pick someone with their heart, they'll have your back. And they'll have those virtues of loyalty. And we'll look back at what King Saul does after this and before, but let's go on. God is advancing young King David, right? Young David. God will use the man he wants. God looks at the heart, and he looks at the heart of David here. He can use anyone he wants. Still in the previous chapter, 1 Samuel 16:13. So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers, and the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. So David has the Spirit of the Lord, Saul does not. Now the Spirit of the Lord left Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord terrified him. Saul's servants then said to him, behold, now an evil spirit from God is terrifying you. So Henry says if the Lord hadn't left Saul, maybe the Philistines would never have come in. Or maybe he would have just gone out and defeated him, but he doesn't have courage now because the Lord has left him. 33, but Saul said to David, back to the story of David Goliath now, we took a detour. But Saul said to David, you are not able to go against this Philistine to fight him, for you were only a youth, while he has been a warrior since his youth. But David said to Saul, your servant was tending his father's sheep when a lion or a bear came and took a sheep from the flock. I went out after it and attacked it and rescued the sheep from its mouth. And when it rose up against me, I grabbed it by its mane and struck it and killed it. So listen to the confidence now. The king tries to dissuade him, right? His brother made fun of him, attacked him. But the king now tries to dissuade him. So people are going to try to throw you off your purpose and throw you off what you need to do in life. You need to keep going. David won't be taken off the mission and his purpose for that day. He knows what must be done. Now watch, he talks about what's prepared him for this moment, and things will prepare you in life. What you do today prepares you for tomorrow's challenge, for tomorrow's obstacles. Henry pointed out David wasn't too proud to say he was a shepherd. He's not embarrassed to say it. That's a lowly position at the time. And look also, let's also talk about this. Look how God has looked out for him. Now, David protected the flock and the sheep, right? From the bear, from the lion. Talks about it. So he's been what? Keeping his flock, protecting the sheep. That's a great lesson for a future king, right? For a future leader. Because he's always been looking out for whom? For the sheep, not himself. David's trained to be a king and a warrior. And he's been preparing him not as a soldier, not as a warrior, as a shepherd. It's interesting. But David's already been protecting the sheep, trained as a great leader. A true leader looks out for his people. That's what David's been doing. Sheep may be misled. They need guidance. They need leaders. Listen to what Saul now says. What he says to Saul, your servant has killed both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, since he has defied the armies of the living God. So what's David angry about? Not himself, not his ego. Nothing to do with him. It's about what? God. This guy's insulted God. I'm going to show you who God is. I'm David. David protected the sheep. Now watch. God had protected David from the lion and the bear, right? Notice how that works. And David said, the Lord who saved me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear, he will save me from the hand of the Philistine. So David, a man after God's own heart, has faith that God will save him. No soldier, not one, no captain, no general, nobody else had it. David has magnificent faith, not in himself, in God. So Saul said to David, go, and may the Lord be with you. Then Saul clothed David with his military attire and put a bronze helmet on his head and outfitted him with armor. And David strapped on his sword over the military attire and struggled at walking, for he had not trained with the armor. So David said to Saul, I cannot go with these, because I have not trained with them. And David took them off. David knows he's not trained in it. It's going to slow him down. What does he have? He has speed. And he's not scared. He has the Lord. He doesn't need the fancy armor and weapons. He's got the Lord, right? His faith is in not his weaponry, not in his armor, in God. Then he took his staff in his hand and chose for himself 5 smooth stones. This is great. From the brook, and put them in the shepherd's bag which he had, that is in his shepherd's pouch, and his sling was in his hand, and he approached the Philistine. Then the Philistine came and approached David with his shield bearer in front of him. When the Philistine looked and saw David, he was contemptuous of him, for he was only a youth and reddish and with a handsome appearance. So the Philistine said to David, am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. The Philistine also said to David, come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the sky and the wild animals. Goliath's confidence is what? Increased and increased and increased, right? This isn't a challenge for mighty Goliath. this little guy. In fact, Goliath is insulted that they sent this. But listen to what David says to him. But David said to the Philistine, "You come to me with a sword, a spear, and a saber, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of armies, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I will strike you and remove your head from you." That's great confidence in God, right? Not himself. And who's he give the credit to? God. Humility. He says, "This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I will strike you and remove your head from you." Trust in the Lord with all his heart is what he has. He says the Lord will hand you over to me, and he gives God credit. "Then I will give the dead bodies of the army of the Philistines this day to the birds of the sky and the wild animals of the earth, so that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that this entire assembly may know that the Lord does not save by sword or by spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will hand you over to us." Then it happened, when the Philistine came closer to meet David, that David ran quickly toward the battle. Notice he's always running toward. David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. David put his hand into his bag and took from it a stone and slung it, and struck the Philistine on the forehead, and the stone penetrated his forehead, and he fell on his face to the ground. So David prevailed over the Philistine with the sling and the stone. He struck the Philistine and killed him, and there was no sword in David's hand. And then David ran and stood over the Philistine, and took his sword, and drew it out of its sheath, and finished him, and cut off his head with it. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, watch what they do. They fled. Remember, their faith was in the giant. His faith was in God. Then the men of Israel and Judah rose up and shouted, and they pursued the Philistines as far as the valley and to the gates of Ekron. And the Philistine dead lay along the way to Shaaraim, even to Gath and Ekron. Then the sons of Israel returned from their close pursuit of the Philistines and plundered their camps. And David took the Philistine's head and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his weapons in his tent. Now, when Saul had seen David going against the Philistine, he said to Abner, the commander of the army. Notice Abner never went out. "Abner, whose son is this young man?" And Abner said, "By your life, O king, I do not know." "You then, ask whose son the youth is." So when David returned from killing the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the Philistine's head in his hand. Then Saul said to him, "Whose son are you, young man?" And David answered, "I am the son of your servant, Jesse, the Bethlehemite." So God had been what? Been preparing David for this, right? He had him a shepherd out in the fields, dealing with the bear and the lion, watching over the sheep, preparing him to be what? A king, a leader, watching out. Now, how is God preparing you? Or if you don't believe in God, how are you preparing yourself? How will taking action and facing your fears make you a stronger man? If you don't believe in God, you can see the courage of David in a large way. If you do believe in God, you can see the obedience of David, the humility of David. Either way, you can see the humility. This is magnificent courage by David. Can you see fighting a lion or bear today? But can you see it as good training for a king, a warrior? Fighting a lion or bear for what purpose? To protect your flock. You see? That's great preparation for a warrior, great preparation for a leader, great preparation for a king. When you're feeling overwhelmed, what is in this story also, if you believe? The battle is to whom? To whom? The battle is the Lord's, but you have to take action in life. You may see a lot of evil events going on today. I get a lot of calls, a lot of problems, obstacles. You may have financial problems. You may have wife problems. You may have any kind of problem. Now, if you believe, the battle is the Lord's. So people are asking the end of times and all these other questions. In the end, God wins. Whatever you're going through, whatever you're doing, could be meant to develop you as a man. Challenges can increase your courage. Challenges can increase your mind. Obstacles can make you a better man, able to become a leader. It can forge you into a stronger man, make you a better leader, to think about others and their welfare, not only your own. God will use the man he wants. If you're concerned about the United States and freedom, that's good. Goliath was the enemy. David knew it, and he faced him. Things seem like they're going very badly right now in the world. What's this passage say? The battle belongs to God. He wins. The plan will go exactly the way he wants to go. Have courage and faith. David had humility too. His enemy had underestimated him. God of David was bigger than any problem, right? Was David as large as Goliath? No. Did he have the best weapons of the time? No. Did it take the best weapons to defeat Goliath? No. You don't have the best of anything to go forward. Move forward today with what you have at your hand toward your purpose and mission. You're afraid to talk to a girl? You're afraid to go for a job? You're afraid to start a business? Go forward. Start and do. Conquer your fears like David conquered Goliath. Forging stronger men, better thinkers, and deeper male friendships. If you like this video, please comment, like, subscribe. Thank you.